welcome in, everyone. Thanks for spending your Tuesday evening with us. You know what it is. It's time to talk some college football. It's After Further Review. I'm Jay Smith. It's Bradley Kendall over here on this side of the table. Back in the studio for the first time in a while, we've got Evan McDowell.
Emphasis on a while.
Yeah, it's been a little while. Scouts running switcher like always.
We invited you back.
Always for us.
Yeah.
It's been a long layoff. We had spring break this past week. We didn't have a show. All was quiet, but there's a lot going on in college football and spring ball, so we'll dive right into it tonight, Bradley, after further review.
It's been a long layoff for us, but not with the football team. They are up and running with spring practice coming up. The spring game is upon us. We are less than a month away from the spring game happening, so that's exciting. Football is ready to come back. We got a lot to talk about, starting with, I guess we can just start with the quarterbacks. That's what everyone's been talking about lately. Dabo was asked this week in his presser after one of the practices about who his starter is going to be next year, and he has stuck true to Kelly Bryant. He has not shied away from being honest about that. Kelly Bryant is his starter right now for the time being, unless anything changes.
I mean, he started 14 games last year, and I think he had, if I'm not mistaken, he had the best record as a first-year starter in Clemson football history. They won 13? Did we go 13-2, Evan?
13-2,
Evan, you should know these things. Clemson
Why should I know this thing? This is y'all.
Well, we went 11-1 regular season, and then ACC championships 12.
And that's
Playoff.
It was 12-2 then.
12-2.
12-2. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the best record for a first-year starter in Clemson history, and he has stuck true to him in his press conferences this spring, saying that he's going to be the starter, and that I think that he feels like he did hint that he could win with any of the guys that he has lined up in quarterback position right now. Like I think he feels like that all those guys could handle the moment, handle the pressure if they got put in that situation where they need to start. But I think for right now, he's doing the safe thing and sticking with Kelly Bryant. And we've seen this before. Dabo likes guys that have been in his system. Kelly Bryant's comfortable with the system. We know he can run the system. So why would Dabo stir up controversy?
It's the same thing with Cole Stout a couple years ago when you played him over Deshaun. I mean, they asked him, how does this compare to when Deshaun came in as a freshman? And he said, Trevor Lawrence is right on cue with where Deshaun was. He doesn't look like a freshman at all, but remember, he is still a freshman, and being in front of a ton of people like that is going to be kind of eye-opening for him. So we'll see how he handles it when he gets to spring ball, but I like the move. I think it's best to go with the experienced guy right now because we saw it was proven that Kelly can win last year, and honestly, with the schedule that we have coming up this year, I think it's pretty manageable for him to do that again. So I don't see any reason to change that up at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be more surprised if Dabo deviated from this than if he decided to name an actual offensive coordinator. This is this will be the fourth year that we've had co-offensive coordinators, and I think, at least myself, when Dabo said that he was going to do when he was going to have Tony Elliott do tight ends and then Jeff Scott do quarterbacks, I was like, I'm not really sure if that's going to work.
Yeah, especially with play calling. You never really
especially with play calling and just the power struggle in general. But so far, both guys have been open to it. It's worked really well.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm more surprised about, the fact that we've had two offensive coordinators for that long, or the fact that none of them have been hired yet by any other programs. But Dabo's seemed to be very comfortable with the setup that he has now. There's no reason to shy away from that, and these guys seem to love coaching here, so there's no reason for them to leave. And they seem to like Kelly, so they seem to have a great relationship with the quarterbacks we have now.
I mean, Evan, do you feel like that it's the smart thing to do to just go with Kelly? I just don't really feel like there's any legitimate reason to choose another guy besides Kelly because he's a proven winner.
No, I mean, absolutely not. That's like Bradley, same reason you go with Cole Stout over Watson to start the year several years back, just because, like you said, Dabo likes guys that are ingrained in the system, have this experience, and this senior leadership ability, which we all know Kelly Bryant has, despite arguably having the worst arm of the four quarterbacks on the roster. We know he could run really well, but as far as a passer, he's never done anything to impress us through the air. But I think this is the smart, probably level-headed decision, especially with so much hype around Trevor Lawrence and so many people in town want to see him play, and obviously all eyes going to be on the long blonde hair flowing out of his helmet during the spring game just to see what he can do. But I think we're also forgetting that in limited time last year, Hunter Johnson played really well, and we know Chase Bryce has some talent. So it's not just a Kelly Bryant versus a Trevor Lawrence. It's a Kelly versus Hunter versus Chase versus Trevor, even though we all kind of expect Trevor to be the go-to guy if Kelly starts kind of falling off. But, I mean, I think this is the smart decision, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Kelly Bryant played well enough last year to lead us to only the 2 losses. Like you said, one of the best records for a Clemson quarterback in their first year as a starter. So if the wheels on the bus are still turning, then there's no need to park and change it. So if Kelly can keep getting the job done, we'll let him keep doing that. And then when something goes wrong, that's when Dabo will change it.
Well, I mean, Dabo's built his program on consistency. Just consistency across the board, whether it's coaching positions, the way that he runs practices, their routines for games. I mean,
It's all about repetition.
yeah, it's all about repetition and getting in the system and staying in the system for as long as you can. I mean, I think it's fun to sit here and speculate about who's the best go-to backup. I think we'd all agree Trevor Lawrence
He's probably got it
is
locked up right now.
I mean, raw talent-wise, I would probably agree with you that he's the best quarterback behind Kelly Bryant. But if it's, let's say, halfway through the third quarter of a game that we're down by a touchdown, I'm putting Hunter Johnson in there, and I'm making Trevor Lawrence maybe even the third-string quarterback and letting Chase Bryce kind of ride the pine there. But like we said, Dabo likes guys who know the system and have some experience. Well,
Yeah.
Hunter Johnson knows the system better than Trevor Lawrence, and he's definitely going to have more experience than Trevor going into the year. So
Trevor's been here since January, though, and Scott did say at a press conference this week that he's picking up things quick because he was asked if Lawrence is on the same level as Deshaun 4 years ago when Deshaun came as a freshman.
He is, yeah.
And Scott didn't hesitate. He said, yep, he's picking up things quickly. He doesn't look like a freshman who showed up in January.
yeah, I mean, we know that. We saw him break all of Deshaun's high school records, but tell me how many college games has Trevor Lawrence made an appearance in?
Yeah, and Scott also went on to say in that article that I thought it was a funny comparison. He said Trevor Lawrence reminded him of his 2-year-old daughter. Sometimes you got to touch something hot to learn and not get burned by it.
Yeah, he was throwing some deep balls in practice.
According to him, he's been testing his arm and throwing balls that he would have in high school, and he's learning you can't exactly throw those on the college level. You're gonna get picked off.
You can, just not D1
Exactly.
ACC
Well,
And I mean, and
football.
that's a maturity issue. That's Trevor Lawrence coming in and saying, I know how good I am. Let me try to prove to you how good I am because I deserve to be, given all this praise and this time. But the fact of the matter is he's the low man on the totem pole right now. Least experience and probably the least amount of maturity despite playing at a high level in high school in a state known for producing good football players. He just has to adapt to the college game. And that's going to come with time and some of those garbage minutes at the beginning of the year against, some of those inferior opponents, not to pick on like the Citadel or Furman or South Carolina State, but teams like that everybody knows we're not going to lose to. You throw Trevor Lawrence in there for the fourth quarter just to see what he can do on a college level and get him some game experience. And then we talk about him maybe being the go-to backup guy or even being the starter 3 or 4 games into the year. But as of right now, he's just not qualified.
Well, you look at the schedule. I think it's safe to say we're going to see some quarterback play from a lot of different guys early on and possibly even middle or deep into the season. Because let's be honest, our home schedule is not what it has been the last couple of years.
And we've been fortunate.
And we have been very fortunate, but I just don't think, and I mean, I know that, we've had issues with ticketing and attendance last year. So I hope that doesn't continue. Yeah, I hope that doesn't continue.
Because if it does, you're going to see 0 students on September the 15th.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Georgia
some
Southern.
There's some pretty weak opening home games.
I thought
Furman-
you were going to say South Carolina's an inferior opponent, and then you added the State part.
No. I would say South Carolina. South Carolina is arguably the second best team that we play at home this year. Furman, Georgia Southern, Syracuse, NC State, who I think would be the best team that we'll face at home, and then Louisville, Duke, and South Carolina. And depending on how their year goes, we could see that could potentially be a ranked matchup there to end the year. Duke, of course, is not going to be a cakewalk. Louisville, we know, has a terrible offensive line. Defensively, they have a couple of key players, but obviously no Lamar Jackson, so you're not expecting too much out of them. And then NC State, we've seen 2 years ago, they gave us trouble at home, and they were a 32-yard field goal away from beating the number 3 team in the country at home, and that shouldn't happen. So we can never overlook NC State, but we are coming off of our bye week. So I think NC State will be the best home game that we have. You're looking at South Carolina potentially being the second best one unless Louisville or Duke surprises us. But the first 3 home games of the year are essentially a wash. I mean, you look at the first 3 home games versus the first 3 away games, and I would say that Texas A&M is a better opponent than Furman, Georgia Tech's a better opponent than Georgia Southern, and Wake Forest is a better opponent than Syracuse. So of our first games, the 3 best ones aren't even in Death Valley. So I think we have a terrible home schedule, at least for the first half of the year. We'll see how the second half could stack up, but just not a very impressive, a very manageable home schedule.
It's a very manageable away schedule.
It is,
Besides
yeah.
that A&M game that you see.
And potentially Florida State.
Yeah, Florida. I
'Cause you
mean,
never
there's a
know.
lot of questions right now surrounding
Absolutely.
Florida State.
But I do appreciate the fact that they're playing A&M because
Yeah.
what we've seen in the committee in the past is if you play a good non-conference schedule, usually they won't punish you for your conference being overall
Too bad we're
relatively
playing
weak.
Furman and Georgia Southern.
That's true. But,
I mean,
but most
I
schools are playing
understand.
those
Well,
kind of teams.
look,
yeah.
I understand people are like, oh, we're playing A&M. It's a big time SEC matchup. When is the last time that A&M contended in the SEC?
Well, Jimbo's going to be there. It's
When,
gonna be
when they
interesting.
had a Heisman winner that beat Alabama by the
Yeah.
name of Johnny Manziel.
I mean, it's been 3 or 4 years. It's been a while since A&M really was a threat to, you know.
I mean, you
A&M
just
is
saw,
still-
you
it's
just
still
saw
a
them fire
formidable
Kevin
SEC
It's a
Sumlin.
formidable opponent, but Clemson's non-conference schedule this year it's trash.
But
and
if-
you look at
other
the
than
other
A&M.
games that we're playing, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Wake Forest, those are our opening 3 ACC games. There is no way that Clemson's strength of schedule or whatever arbitrary metric they use to measure that stuff is going to be strong at all.
Well, going back to last year, if we go out and we win out the entire year and we lose one game and we win the conference, we're going to get in regardless.
All I'm
I don't
saying
care
is
how
that
bad or how good our schedule is.
Clemson's going to need to throttle their opponents to look impressive. When you're playing teams like Furman, Georgia Southern, Syracuse, and Wake Forest in the first half of the year, if you're not beating those teams by 4 or 5 possessions, it doesn't look good. And with the talent that we have returning on the defensive side of the ball, the gunslingers that we have at quarterback, I don't care if you have to rotate guys in. You should be beating a team like Syracuse 42-14. I mean, you should be throttling them. Don't you agree, Evan? I mean, I feel like that Clemson this year, I mean, they have the A&M game on the road, but besides that, what am I supposed to be impressed with, even if they're blowing them out?
I think you got to look at this as almost 2 mini seasons because the first half of the season leading up to your bye week, like you said, is except for at A&M, which could go either way because we don't know what to expect out of A&M this year with new coach and obviously Johnny Manziel's or Von Miller's on the field. But the first half of the year leading up to the bye week, there should be no reason that we should lose any of those 6 games. Like, I know Georgia Tech is a hard field to play at Bobby Dodd sometimes. Wake Forest, I don't think is a cakewalk, and yeah, we all know what happened with Syracuse last year in the Carrier Dome. But I mean, looking at the first half of the year, something would have to go horrifically wrong for us to lose any of those games. I mean, you would need knock on wood.
I think you'd have to be horrifically wrong for the game to even be close.
No, I mean, knock on
well,
wood.
I mean,
You
we
would
blew
need
out
several
last year,
people to
so.
tear ACLs for us to lose any of those first 6 games.
Yeah.
And then we are really heavily backloaded. Like NC State, Florida State, Louisville, Boston College, Duke, South Carolina, no breaks in there. So that, I mean, the last 6 games could be a tough run, but I mean, your only road games are at a shaky Florida State, who, without Francois last year was hot trash and has a new coach coming in this year. So you really don't know what to expect out of the Seminoles. And playing in Chestnut Hill, like I like Steve Adazio, and I have nothing against Boston College, but like we beat them 56-0 that last time we played at Chestnut Hill. So like that game is essentially a practice for the last 2 weeks of the year. So, I mean, as of right now, you don't see any stumbling blocks, but you really didn't expect us to lose to Syracuse last year either. So there's always the potential for disaster, but you need a lot of dominoes to fall and a lot to go wrong before.
And that's kind of what I was going to say. I almost equate our schedule to like Miami's last year. How Miami kind of just waltzed through their schedule playing relatively weak opponents up until they had that game against Notre Dame, and they finally showed how good they could potentially be. And I feel
So
like
should Clemson be worried? Should
I
Clemson
don't
be
think
worried
they
that they're
should.
going to
Absolutely not.
sleepwalk through the first 2/3 of the season?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we're going to have the A&M game mixed in there, so you're going to obviously be geared up for that one.
One game.
At Georgia Tech's going to be interesting. Even if Georgia
We've
Tech's
done
not
a
the
great
best.
job, though, proving that we can neutralize the triple option the last few years.
Well, and I think it helps with that, especially that Georgia Tech game, because whenever I think of playing at Bobby Dodd, I think of a Thursday night game, which for some reason Thursday night games for us are tougher and we struggle more with them. Insert Syracuse Carrier Dome here.
That was a Friday night game.
Well, same.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
was Friday,
weekday-
it was
it's a
Friday the
weekday
13th, I
game.
believe.
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah,
that
I mean, we
Syracuse game
don't
was
have a
Friday the 13th.
single Thursday or Friday night game. We have all Saturday games, which I think plays well to our advantage as well because you get a full week of
Consistency.
preparation, before each game. So
I'm just saying that the games that we do have, while they do look pretty bad on paper, if you look deeper into them, they're going to have a little bit of meaning behind them. Georgia
Oh,
Tech's
yeah.
going to be interesting. The Syracuse game will be revenge.
But we're not.
Last time we played
we're
State
not
at home was
playing
interesting.
teams that are making noise in the ACC.
No,
we're
but
not
I've-
playing Virginia Tech. We're not playing Miami. Yeah,
So are you
we're
more
playing
worried about
Florida
our
State.
overall strength of schedule and how we're going to look at the end of the year?
So we've talked about the committee and how much they value your non-conference schedule.
Well, if we're talking about non-conference, then we've got a good team on there. Compare that to the rest of the country.
All I'm saying is Texas A&M. I mean, Evan may have time to check on this while we're. When's the last time A&M was ranked in the top 25? I don't personally know.
it was
It's
last
probably,
year.
I think they
Was
were
it
ranked
last
at some
year?
point last year.
I'm pretty sure they were ranked last year.
What was their record last year?
It wasn't great, but they
Okay,
still
they
were
finished
ranked.
7-6.
So
I
they
mean,
were
they
ranked at
fired
some
Kevin
point.
Sumlin, so how
Maybe.
well do you think they did?
Yeah.
My point is it's been a while. Yes, Johnny Manziel, but it's been a while since A&M really made any noise.
All right, well, how about this? On September the 8th, that's when we play at Texas A&M. You want to take a guess at who Alabama is playing on September the 8th?
Chattanooga.
Probably UAB.
A home game against the Red Wolves of Arkansas State.
See, there you go. I mean, there's teams around the country that are not scheduling.
Who does
teams
Alabama
like A&M.
open with? Do you
They
know?
are opening on the 1st in Orlando against Louisville.
Yeah,
so
in Orlando.
The first week is actually fairly decent.
Why are
If
they
you-
playing
no,
in
they're. I mean, no, it's
Orlando?
not. Louisville's not going to be any good this year because without Lamar Jackson, they're absolutely terrible.
No.
Offensive line is a wet paper bag, and
whole-
except for Jair Alexander on defense, there's nothing there either. So you take away a Heisman Trophy winner, you're looking at a really good varsity high school football team up in Kentucky.
The whole ACC right now.
You're
is
looking at a motorcycle crash of a football team for Bobby Petrino.
Evan,
there.
don't motivate them. They're going to come out and throttle us now.
I mean, I would love to see it happen, honestly, for Louisville's sake.
I
just
think
don't
the whole
they're capable of
ACC
that.
right now, though, is looking for offensive firepower. Like, you
Listen.
look across the conference and you lose somebody like Lamar. Who's your guy? Like, who is your offensive?
Yeah, well, Francois is going to have to be that guy to step up, and he's
From
coming off
Florida
of a torn
State?
ACL at this point.
Florida
so.
State's in shambles. If they
They're a mess. Yeah, Willie
Yeah,
Taggart's not
no.
inheriting a very good situation right now.
if they make a bowl game, that's a win for them.
I did say early on, I think Boston College and Wake on the road are going to be very, very interesting. I know it doesn't look like that
better not
preseason.
be.
BC closed out the year pretty strong last year, and Wake is supposed to bounce back.
Did you hear
and
what
be
Evan
even
said
better
about the
year.
last time we played BC on the road?
Well, let's be
56
honest.
to nothing.
BC was barely even a varsity high school team.
I love
back then when
Steve
we played them.
Adazio. And I know Ashley Hodge might be watching.
Yeah, I hope she's not listening right now.
But there is no way that a team like Boston College should challenge a team like Clemson,
No, they shouldn't,
considering
but
the caliber.
It won't be a complete cakewalk, especially on the road in November.
If it's not a complete cakewalk, then what? I mean, I just don't understand why would that not be just a blowout.
Well, it's on the road, one. It's in November. It's going to be cold. Boston College has a pretty good run game. They were fairly decent last year. And it's going to be towards the end of the year, and we're already looking towards South Carolina. So I don't think it's going to be close, but it could potentially be. But you're right. In the committee's eyes, that's not going to look as
The
good.
non-conference is really the biggest issue for me because even if we play A&M close on the road, we're going to annihilate Furman and Georgia Southern. I mean, those are two tune-up games.
And name one school that doesn't have two tune-up games throughout the year. I mean, Alabama, for God's sake, plays tune-up games before the Auburn game.
And Alabama dismantled us in the playoff last year when lots of people said Alabama shouldn't be in the playoff.
I remember 3 weeks ago you said.
All
it
right,
was
here.
two
You want to
players.
know what Alabama's non-conference schedule looks like next year? All right, September 8th, home, Arkansas State. We already talked about that. September 29th, home, Louisiana Raging Cajuns. And November the 17th, God bless our neighbors, the Citadel marches into Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Pray for them right
the
now.
week before Thanksgiving.
Alabama's playing the Citadel?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, man.
I would love
Go
to know.
Bulldogs.
That's a good
I'd love to
paycheck
know
coming in.
how much the Citadel is getting paid for that.
Not
Oh, 7
enough.
figures at least.
They're probably getting paid just to tour the facility. Like, you think about that for a moment.
That's what they did when they came here for the hurricane.
Yeah, they were here for the hurricane this past season.
But, I mean, like Evan said,
I
there's-
understand that argument for Alabama. I think Alabama's one of the only teams that gets a pass on the non-conference.
we can't.
Alabama dismantled us in that playoff.
Do you want to
game.
you want to
I mean,
compare
did you
some other
watch?
ACC teams'
Yeah, I'd love
non-conference
to.
schedules?
What's
no,
Florida
I
State's
would.
Here's all
non-conference
right. Here,
schedule?
I got Louisville pulled up already. Their non-conference the week after Alabama, so they're going to go down to Orlando, have a nice little sunny weekend, and then get destroyed. And then they get to go home the next week and play the Fighting Larry Birds, the Indiana State Sycamores. So that'll be a nice.
They have a
little bounce
football
back.
team?
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
right?
wow. I'm
Their
honestly
helmet's
kinda
really cool. It's
shocked.
like a nice shade of blue. Anyway, so the week after that, they got Western Kentucky, and then they're playing. Well, Kentucky's their rival, so they play them at the end of the year. So Indiana State, Western Kentucky, and then regular old Kentucky for Louisville's out of conference schedule. I'll pull up Miami's and Florida State's too if you give me a minute here.
It won't be much better, I can tell you that right
Oh,
now.
no,
Especially Miami,
it
because they
definitely
love
won't
to schedule big opponents.
Let's see.
I'm being
Miami.
sarcastic, but
Yeah, they had terrible non-conference opponents last year. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think that Clemson. We've talked about this. It's amazing. It's been a 20-minute conversation. We have.
Oh, you
probably
thought that
the
was
best-
bad. You thought that was bad. Here's Miami's non-conference schedule. This is 3 weeks in a row: September the 8th, September the 15th, and September the 22nd. The 8th, they're home against Savannah State, and it doesn't even have their mascot listed. So your guess is as good as mine. The next week, they're on the road at Toledo, whoop-de-doo, and then the week after that, they're home against Florida International University. So 3 weeks in a row, they're going to win by at least 3.5 touchdowns.
Be glad we're playing A&M. I mean, geez.
I'm
it could be worse, trust
amazed
me.
that these schools are scheduling such weak. I understand the need for a tune-up game, especially at the beginning of the season. A game like Furman to open makes sense.
Now, do you want to know Florida State's now?
Yeah, I mean, I
Please.
don't think Florida State's going to contend for an
All right,
ACC
so
championship this year.
we'll count out Florida at the end of the year because that's a rivalry game.
Yeah.
Their other 2 non-conference games, September the 8th, they're playing Samford. I'll give you either $1 if you can tell me what Samford's mascot is without Googling it.
They're the Bulldogs, right?
Yeah, they are. You get $1.
Yeah,
And
my brother toured there.
Okay, well, that's kind of cheating. And then 2 weeks after that, they play Northern Illinois. Both of those games are at home, needless to say.
Well, that was good 5 years
Watch
ago.
out for the
but
Huskies now.
That was great
Not-
5
not
years
so
ago.
fast.
And
That's
Florida's
why
a
we're
home game.
schedule.
So their entire non-conference schedule is at home, which I guess isn't. And
Well,
they,
this is
they
no-
play Notre Dame this year, too, so I guess
Look,
that
and I
This
understand,
schedule's no
too,
different
that-
to what it's been in the years past. I mean, we've always had 2 tune-up games.
Well, yeah,
App State and Wofford
not
freshman
this
year?
week. I understand that schools are scheduling these games. I believe it's like 3 or 4 or 5 years in
I
advance.
don't think we didn't think Georgia Southern was going to be that good, though. Yeah.
I don't really know. I mean, I understand the reasoning behind scheduling a game like Furman. I totally get that. A&M on the road should be an interesting matchup. I think it should be. It'll probably
Yeah, I
be
would
Can I
hope
just
so.
go ahead and
closer than
read-
I'd like it to be, but
Can I just go ahead and read all the ACC teams' non-conference schedules?
Sure.
Because I'm
Knock
looking
it
at
out.
Boston College
You're helping
right
my
now.
arguments. I'm totally.
I almost laughed out loud. So Boston College, they play Massachusetts in week 1. The week after that, they play Holy Cross, and then September 22nd, they're at Purdue. Duke, they play Army week 1, Northwestern the week after that, Baylor the week after that, and North Carolina Central the week after that. So their whole first month of the year,
Duke goes to Baylor, too, right?
they do. They're at Baylor and at Northwestern.
I'm
So
surprised Baylor's still allowed to have a football team.
yeah.
That'll be
I feel like
a
that's-
nice
yeah.
dub for Duke.
Georgia Tech plays Alcorn State week 1, South Florida week 2, and then on the 29th of September they play Bowling Green. That South Florida game is at USF, but the other 2 are at home. We already talked about Louisville. Miami plays.
We heard that.
Well, they didn't on the other schedule. It didn't have listed as September the 2nd. That's a Sunday. They play LSU to open the year in Arlington,
Okay,
Texas.
that's a matchup.
So
that's
that does help
respectable.
the Hurricanes a little bit. North Carolina, the first 3 weeks of the year, they got the California Golden Bears, East Carolina, and Central Florida.
And
So-
Trubisky's not coming back, so that won't go well.
No, I mean we're not. And they play Western Carolina the second to last week of the year, so they got 4. NC State's got James Madison week 1. Georgia State the week after that, West Virginia the week after that. All of those are home games. And then September the 22nd, they're at Marshall. So their first month is non-conference. Pitt has got Albany to open the year. Penn State the week after that, September 29th, they're at UCF. And
Well,
only
now,
3 for them.
I mean, like I say, I understand that most teams are going to schedule 1 or 2 cupcake games.
there's only 4 more teams. Hold on. I was almost through the whole ACC.
Oh man, you put me to sleep back here.
Yeah, no, that's how boring these non-conference schedules are. It's not my fault. Syracuse at Western Michigan, Wagner, and home against UConn.
Wagner.
Virginia's got Richmond week 1, at Indiana week 2, and then they got Ohio week 3, and then Liberty on November the 10th. Virginia Tech opens the year at Florida State on September the 3rd. That's a Monday
They open
game.
That's
what?
Yeah, September the 3rd at Florida State. That's a Monday. That's
the
a Monday
first
night
week
game.
of the year?
That's what it says. Let me make sure the Florida State schedule says the same thing.
It's an interesting.
no way.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I've never-
Florida State says September the 3rd. Virginia Tech. That's
Really?
a Monday.
Wow.
Home game.
Opening the year is a conference
Why?
matchup.
Okay.
I'm surprised they're not playing West Virginia because they played them first week
Yeah,
last year. You think
that's-
they would
Yeah.
go home and home with them?
They got
That's
at Florida
strange.
State, and then the week after that, William and Mary at home. Week after that, East Carolina at home. Week after that, at Old Dominion. And then last but not least, Wake Forest starts the year August the 30th. That's a Thursday night game, so one of the first games of the year. At Tulane, they play Towson the week after that. They play Rice on September the 29th, and that's all. So only three for the Demon Deacons.
You're educating me on all these teams that actually have football teams I didn't know about.
I know,
so.
right?
This is-
So I would say
I feel like I know like half of Division II now.
I
I
would
wouldn't
say
mind
Clemson-
seeing Florida State go 0-1 in the ACC in the first week of the year. So that's.
I would say Clemson probably
Food for thought.
has the single best non-conference game on their schedule at Texas A&M out of any of the ACC schools.
Yeah, I mean, you could even include the SEC in that too. Best
Unless you want
non-conference
to
game
count,
would be
well,
Clemson.
never mind. Louisville's playing. I forgot Louisville opens the year against Alabama and Orlando.
Oh, that's just.
Still,
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
just a
I mean,
sacrifice.
again, we've beat it to death now. It's been 25 minutes talking about this.
Sorry.
But no, I think it's interesting because, I mean, it's something that the committee says that they take into consideration when they're judging how, they should rank these teams.
Yeah, and this is why you see such great first weeks now with all these non-conference games.
Yeah,
that we've
I mean,
got.
it's honestly kind of surprising that many teams have cupcake games the first couple weeks
Yeah.
of the year. I mean, you've got A&M for us, but most of the ACC teams that you mentioned really didn't have much that was going to challenge them in the month of September.
I'm surprised there weren't more Big Ten teams scheduled for non-conference opponents because
We had
we saw
Purdue.
last year during bowl season the Big Ten did historically well in bowl games. I think the only game that I saw that was a Big Ten team was Purdue, and maybe there was a Northwestern thrown in there. So even the few ACC schools that are playing Big Ten schools, they're playing some of the bottom dwellers. Like no one's scheduling Michigan or even Ohio State, I guess. Even though Clemson seems to play them pretty often
Michigan,
anyway.
they're poised for another fifth place finish in their division.
Dude, third place in the Big Ten,
Jim
like, Big
Harbaugh,
Ten
man.
West, right?
Every time I back
legends.
Jim Harbaugh, it comes back to kick me in the butt because
God, he's so overrated.
he's just. I mean, I'm
Kick you in
starting
the
to realize
khakis,
he's just
you mean.
average.
What was that?
Comes back to kick you in the khakis.
Yeah, no
exactly.
kidding. No, hadn't been very impressed. And we'll see. I mean, there's probably going to come a point either this year or next year if they maintain their current kind of. I mean, they've kind of plateaued, which is sad
Sadly,
to say.
after just
I
3
just
years.
we'll see how long it takes for Michigan fans to get tired
Yeah.
of Harbaugh because I think right now they still are siding with him.
Speaking of Michigan, though,
Oh, okay.
I know we've got that whole 64-team playoff that they released on ESPN. I don't know if you saw that article or not, but they in honor of March Madness, they decided to rank 64 college football teams in a playoff
Which is
bracket.
what I think they should have been doing for years now.
You and Mike Leach both.
You have to
That's
start
just
that in
my
like
opinion.
November.
Huh?
If you were to do a 64-team college football bracket, you'd have to start that like the first week of November.
well, you could
get
take
rid
out
of,
the-
well,
the-
get rid of conference championships because they don't mean
Especially in this
anything.
instance,
You look
They
at the
mean-
playoff.
Get
rid of the
Look at the
cupcakes.
playoff the last 2 years. That tells you right there the conference championships don't mean a thing. And realistically, it would probably be 16. I think 16 would
wouldn't be
be as
64.
large as they'd ever make it.
64 is
64 is
outrageous.
crazy, and it's because of the amount of rest that's required.
I mean, you got
between games.
just
You
looking
have
at the
players
seedings,
dying
you
on
got
the field.
entire conferences in this 64-team playoff. Like Clemson, let's find Miami, let's find some more Florida State. How many
Virginia
other
Tech, Georgia
ACC
Tech.
schools can we find? Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech. I mean, Duke, Wake Forest, NC State. We got the whole ACC in this freaking thing. Like obviously,
So basically,
64 is
taking
more.
away all but the Power Five.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Yeah.
just throw the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and half the Pac-12 into a tournament.
And I love
see
how at
what
the very
happens.
end they just threw Fresno State in there to say that they actually had a non-Power 5 team
Yeah.
mixed in.
San Diego State's a 15 seed too.
Well, so I'm looking here at the regional final, and it had number 1 seed Clemson over number 3 seed Michigan State, and it says, how we got here. Clemson beats South Florida, a 16 seed, in the first round. Then Clemson beats TCU, a 9 seed, in the second round.
That's a fairly decent second round.
Which, so that was the regional final for, I guess, Clemson's region. And then the regional final for, the South region. They actually had Auburn and Alabama, which would be,
Ooh.
that would be an awesome matchup,
Well, you couldn't
especially
get rid of the Iron
postseason
Bowl
play.
early on, so that would be their second time playing.
Yeah. Well, if they had that many, I mean, you think about.
Well, you'd probably just have to
many
get rid of all the
games.
cupcake games at that point, which would leave them pretty
You'd have to
broke.
you'd probably have to knock the number of conference games down to 5 or
maybe,
6.
maybe
Or
that.
6.
Just play like your division, which would force the Big. I guess the Big 12 already split into divisions.
Interestingly though, in the Southeast region, you had 2 semifinals. One was Georgia USC. That's a compelling matchup. One was Notre Dame NC State.
Interesting. That's a great basketball
and Notre
game.
Dame was a 2 seed. And they took on 11 seed NC State, and then they had Georgia and Notre Dame in a regional final. And then the other regional final, they had Stanford and Washington. So that's an interesting matchup. And then national championship, they had Clemson and Georgia.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. That would
28-27 victory.
These two
Tigers.
states would implode if we had that happen.
Yeah,
I mean,
imagine if the game was in Atlanta.
You saw
again.
Alabama, Georgia last year. Yeah, I think it's an interesting concept. I think 16 is definitely the max you would ever see, if that. I'm thinking 8 is going to be what we probably end up seeing eventually. We've had this debate on Tiger Town Countdown plenty of times on what it could look like, but yeah, it's cool to look at. I'm looking. They had Arizona.
I mean, when there's nothing else going on in the offseason.
Wait a minute, hold on. I know this whole thing is completely skeptical, but I'm reading the paragraph about the national championship between us and Georgia, and this whole last sentence just gets me. After an ineffective first half, Dabo Swinney benches Kelly Bryant in favor of true freshman Trevor Lawrence, a native of Georgia, who leads Clemson on the decisive touchdown drive. Where have I heard that story?
Sounds
before?
a lot like last year.
Insert the Hawaiian phenom Tua Tagovailoa, whose name is way more fun to say than Trevor Lawrence. That literally happened. That's not even creative, whoever wrote the national championship paragraph for this whole thing.
And it was against Georgia.
I was happy about it, too, because Clemson won this whole thing, and now it's
direct your anger towards Adam Rittenberg.
Rittenberg.
That's who wrote this article. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
Dabo benching his. I don't think, even if we were down by double digits, that Dabo would bench a starter.
Doesn't seem like that kind of guy.
In the
to
national
end up
championship
doing
game.
that,
I think
yeah.
Dabo just values the seniority too much to do that. I still think, and we've talked about it a lot tonight, I believe that with the first few weeks of the season, we're going to see Kelly, we're going to see Trevor, we're going to see Hunter, and we might even see, Chad?
Chase Bryce.
Chase, the fourth string.
Chad Bryce.
Chad.
I didn't know what. I knew it started with a C.
Bring back
That's how
Tucker
far
Israel.
down on the depth chart.
But I
you don't even know his
think we
first
could
name.
see all 4 of those guys. I know we're going to see the first 3, no doubt in my mind.
You'll
When
see
you're
the
playing a
first
team
three
like Georgia
within the first
Southern.
3 quarters of the Furman game.
Say that again.
If not even the first quarter.
Yeah, I know. We should see. I would expect to see all 4 quarterbacks against Furman. I would say see at least a quarterback a quarter. I mean, if Kelly goes into the second quarter against Furman, we got a problem.
Now, hypothetically, if Kelly struggles in the A&M game at all, like if we see him first half,
Hunter Johnson.
Do you think
yeah.
Hunter comes in, or
Yeah,
do you think he's
absolutely.
just going to ride it with Kelly?
Well, because Hunter was the fall guy last year when
I think
Kelly
you're gonna
started
have to
doing
wait till
poorly.
spring
Why
ball.
not do it again?
I think spring ball is probably going to be the deciding factor. I mean, or not spring ball. We're in spring ball. Spring game is
Yeah.
going to be the deciding factor. They're going
I
to
think
look
the summer will be the deciding factor.
maybe, but I think a lot of times these coaches probably have their minds made up by the spring game, so that way they can spend the summer planning. Like, okay,
Hypothetically, if
we needed a guy to come out, this is who's coming
Yeah.
in. These are the types of plays we're going to call for him. This is how we're going to run the offense.
I'll be willing to make an on-air bet with either or both of you right now that at the beginning of the year for the Furman game, Trevor Lawrence will be listed as the 3rd string quarterback on our depth chart.
I'm going to go second string. I think. He's
What do you
gonna
want to
go-
wager, Bradley? Let's make things interesting.
I'm going
here.
third. I think that Hunter's probably going to end up second. I
think Hunter will too.
think that he's as talented as Trevor, but I think Dabo likes the fact that he's been around longer. So if you want to take this bet, I can't.
I'm
you
willing
could
to be
even
the lone
go-
man out here.
You could even make a really bold pick and say that he's not even going to jump Chase Bryce on the depth chart just because of seniority. I don't think that'll
he'll
happen.
jump
Chase
I think he
Bryce.
definitely will
I
jump
think he
Chase
will.
Bryce, but you could see how someone could make
I think
that
Trevor
argument.
with his left arm is better than Chase Bryce.
Probably.
Just a bold prediction.
Wow, that was bold.
But yeah, no, Trevor Lawrence will be the 3rd string quarterback come week 1.
So is this a bet, or
So
are
let's-
y'all
let's
just going
make
to
a
talk
wager,
about
Bradley.
We
it?
might
What
need
do
to
you
leave this
want
up in the comment section on our Instagram page. What this bet's
we
going to be.
we can.
I
we
would
can
say
post it.
whoever's wrong has to shave his head, but that'd only be a loss for me.
Oh,
man.
wow!
All right,
well,
how about this? If I'm wrong,
willing
I'll
to-
shave my head. If you're wrong, you get to choose whatever your fate is. How about that? But it has to be something
You're
the
shaving your
equivalent
head?
to
he's got to
shaving a head.
swim across the reflection pond. How about
There
that?
you
Oh,
go.
that's been done before. We got to think of something.
No,
like
let's
that.
be
Well, if you're
creative.
going to shave your head, you really are Samson from the Bible. Then, if we're going to do that whole number,
I know. I'll lose all of my strength.
We can
What
post
little bit I
this to
have.
see what
We'll figure
the
something
viewers
out,
wanted
yeah.
to decide.
No, we got
but-
to come up with something now. We can't put this off.
right now. I don't
Oh,
know.
God,
Ask
okay.
Scout. Scout, what do you
Scout.
think?
Got any people in the studio
Put
audience
the mic
back
over to
there?
Scout. Ask Scout what she thinks.
Whatever Scout says, Bradley, you have to do, and it has to be on air,
Scout,
obviously.
Punish me.
Get a Tiger Vision tattoo.
Oh!
A Tiger Vision tramp
Oh
stamp.
God, I am gonna go hand money over to Davo to make sure that Trevor's not.
Where does that tattoo have to go though? Can it be
Wherever
anywhere?
Bradley wants.
Okay.
Let's not get specific on the
Forehead.
show.
Let's do
Just
forehead.
the Tiger
Right across
Vision
the
logo
forehead.
anywhere on Bradley's body.
I like this bet.
Right here.
I like it. I like it.
All right. Well,
Can it? Does it have to be permanent or?
no, because shaving your head's not really a permanent thing, I guess.
Okay.
But it has to be. Yeah, it has to be like a henna or whatever the longest lasting tattoo is that's not permanent.
That's in the budget. We can make that.
We'll
happen.
figure that out.
Yep.
Well, I don't think there's anything football related that we have left to talk about tonight. It has been a lot of fun. It's real good to be back in Tiger Vision. It's nice to have Evan back on the show. I know we'll rope him into some more shows throughout the spring and then obviously in the fall.
Yeah, I guess
we'll be
We'll
cranking
see.
shows out hopefully twice a week. That would be ideal. But I think we're going to try and have Clemson, I think he's a sports information director. Or one
Tim
of them.
Beret?
Not Tim Beret. We're going to have
Close.
Sammy Blackman on.
Oh, he's the football SID. Never mind.
And then maybe some
If-
other guys.
if it all works out.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
Still trying to pull some strings. But that would be next week, probably next Tuesday. But yeah, no, it's been very entertaining. We only got to talk about
eventful.
one
It's
thing,
eventful.
but it took up 35 minutes, so
Whose fault is that?
Evans.
Probably
It's
me.
Evans' fault.
I've been hibernating off the show the past couple weeks. I had a lot I wanted to say.
There you go. All right. It's been a lot of fun bringing you this edition of After Further Review for Evan, Scout, Bradley, and myself. We appreciate you watching.
Thanks for watching.